is Clifford W. Bunks. My hometown is Appleton, Wisconsin. And on June 26th of 1944, I enlisted in the Navy because I did not want to be in any other branch of service except the Navy. My folks had a cottage on Lake Winnebago, and when we lived in town, I was lifeguard at the swimming pool and Herb Park, and several of us guys used to do diving exhibitions for parties and so forth that were around. The four of us, as I mentioned to you, Harry Ackman and Jim Heenan and Bill Shue and myself all went into service at the same time into the Navy. And the training that we had at Great Lakes was typical of all basic training, where you had all your marching and marching and marching, and discipline and respect. And we had swimming lessons, we had boat lessons, and many other things that usually that everybody that enters service goes through the same type of almost basic training. The only thing we didn't have at Great Lakes was rifle training, and but we had to stand guard duty, and of course that was always a difficult time because you marched all day, and then at night you had guard duty from 12 to 4, and wasn't able to sleep standing up, so you're doing your guard duty. We had the rowboat, and there were 10 guys in a rowboat, and 5 on each side, and we had a coxswain that directed our pace of paddling, and he did just one exceptional job, and we did win first place as in the boat contests of all the other barracks. At the time it was at Great Lakes. We were home for 2 weeks on leave, and then we reported back to Great Lakes, and then from Great Lakes then we were sent to Camp Perry in Williamsburg, Virginia. And in Williamsburg, Virginia, at the Camp Perry, we were training for cargo, training for bringing on supplies, shipping off supplies and shipping on supplies to other ships. And we carried a lot of, we had two, well, that was the extent of our training. And then we did have some training on the LCVPs as to the mechanisms and how they worked and so forth. And then from there we were there for about 2 weeks, and then we took a train from Williamsburg to Virginia to San Pedro, California. And of course we were on a troop train, and on that it took about 7 days to get there, because every place along the line you had to pull off to the side on the siding and let the other trains go by that carried all the supplies. I guess we called them cattle cars. And there wasn't much room. There was several hundred, or many, I can't really recall, but there was a lot of soldiers on there and sailors. Yeah. We went to San Pedro, California, and at San Pedro, California, we were in a barracks, and we had more extensive training. They had a theater type deal where they would have an airplane flying across the screen, and I was on a 40 millimeter fire control detector, and as that plane came across the screen, then your responsibility to lead the plane far enough with your shelling that you could hit the plane, and every 5th bullet that was there was a tracer bullet, so you could see where you are at your target. And I must have been a fairly good marksman, because when I boarded ship, I was appointed as a 44 twin millimeter fire controlman. It was one of the in any basic training, that was probably the most enjoyable. At the time, there was, at the large barracks there, we knew we were going to go aboard a ship at some time or other. So we had to wait for a ship, and we were there at San Pedro de Barracks there for almost a month, taking training. And then they assigned us a ship, and we had to travel down to San Diego, and we were there at Camp Elliott. And then at Camp Elliott, we got more extensive training, and at that time somebody asked if somebody would like to volunteer as a cook assistant, which I volunteered for. So I was appointed the cook assistant and assisted the cook. And our ship was probably one of the first ones that had an ice cream machine. And I was responsible for taking care of all the ice cream. And then at that time, when we were aboard ship, I was the cook for the chief petty officers. And we had 12 chief petty officers aboard, and they had their own quarters where we used to feed the chief petty officers. Well, I like to eat, and I enjoyed cooking when I was at home. And I thought, well, this would be a good duty rather than being on deck, swabbing down the deck all the time and doing all the other chores that are required of the seaman. I thought that this was real good duty. Well, they just told us that we're going to Camp Elliott. They have a ship available for us, and we'll be going aboard. So we went aboard this ship, and then there was a USS Carteret, which was an APA, and then an APA was Amphibious Personnel Attack, and that was, then we were in the amphibious branch of the Navy. And we went out on a shakedown cruise for about 2 weeks and then came back to port. And they fixed up all whatever repairs were needed. Then we left there with the crew and went to Catalina Island. And at Catalina Islands, we had all the training of gun shooting and LCVP training, going ashore, and gunnery practice continuously, and fire drills, and jumping off the ship into the life rafts that were in the water. So that was quite extensive there. We were ordered back quite immediately to get back to San Francisco, San Diego. Yeah. And at San Diego, we had 24 hours to load the ship with Navy personnel and Army personnel and Marines. Well, they had all the supplies there, and the personnel were not they were not trained for invasion or anything. They were just personnel, I would imagine, office type of personnel that were going to Pearl Harbor. So they got us on after 24 hours. We left there and arrived in Pearl Harbor 6 days later. And unbeknown to us, there was a ship of our same class that broke down. So they loaded the 5th Marine Division aboard our ship. And there at the point, we were the only ship then, besides the USS Gamble. The USS Gamble was a destroyer escort, and they escorted us to Saipan. So there were the only 2 ships there going to Saipan. And on a number of occasions on the way to Saipan, we had a number of submarine alerts from the sonar radioed to us for zigzag motions. And we had at least 3 or 4 zigzag motions, because at the time, sometime prior to that, it was a little hairy, because some Marines or some submarines shelled the West Coast. So it was, we knew we were at war. Yes, USS Carteret was a sort of a new class ship. It had a 7.5-foot draft in the front, 15-foot draft in back, and had twin anchor, twin screws, and had a tail anchor. And our purpose was to go up on the beach, unload our supplies, drop the anchor, reverse the screws, and pull ourselves off the beach. So this happened. We did that at the Catalina Islands. We headed out Saipan, and it took us 11 days from Pearl Harbor to 11 days to get there. Our ship was capable of 15 knots, which was rather speedy for a ship of that size. And as the day we arrived in Saipan, my brother was in Saipan aboard a supply ship, and there he noticed my ship pulling into port. So he got permission from the officers to visit me for 2 hours. And then the next day I got permission to go to his ship and had dinner with him at his ship. So that was a Valentine that, of course, I probably will never forget. And then on the 16th of February, a convoy of about 30 ships. It took about 48 hours from Saipan to Iwo Jima. And at Iwo Jima, we arrived there sort of at 02 hours. And I had the soundings as to dropping the anchor. So we were on the very south end of Mount Suribachi, the last ship on the south end of Suribachi. And we dropped the anchor, and of course the sounding was that it should reach bottom now, but it didn't. And it kept on going and kept on going. So they had to halt the anchor. They put on the brakes. And this is at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it lit up the sky. So the enemy knew that where the ships, or some of the ships were. So in addition to that, on the way to Iwo Jima, the radio broadcast was aboard ship that Tokyo says that we know you're coming and you'll be humiliated when you get there. We were only 2,000 yards from shore, and at 8 o'clock, I'm sorry, 5 o'clock that morning, it was on the 19th of February. Reveille, it was at 5 o'clock for the Marines, and they showered and came down, and we did a beautiful breakfast for them. They had steak and potatoes, and of course we knew that would be the last good meal they'd have for some time. Then they had to go over the cargo nets into the LCVPs, and each one of them held about 60 Marines with gear. And then we had to make 3 trips because we had 1,100 troops on there, and so that brought us 1,100 making. And then on the 3rd trip, when the boat, LCVP, brought back wounded Marines, I'm sorry. And we had, because our ship was so new, we had a wonderful sick bay. And the Army doctors were aboard our ship and took care of a lot of the injured that came aboard. And so we could see flamethrowers as the